Alright, in this presentation I'm going to show you how to install Linux Mint in a virtual environment. A couple things I did find out that I did have a couple of issues in some trial runs on a 64-bit Windows operating system with the latest version of VirtualBox with the latest version of Linux Mint, and it did not go too well. So what I end up doing is I end up downloading an older version of Linux Mint, previous version. So basically, if you select all versions, and the version that I downloaded here is the previous one, 19.3. So I downloaded this particular version, and it ended up working. So for whatever reason, the latest and greatest, there's some kind of incompatibility. Didn't have a chance to troubleshoot it out entirely, but tried this one and it worked. So download that one, and we're going to utilize this ISO file for the installation of Linux Mint. So here I'm going to change basically the settings to make sure that I'm utilizing the correct ISO image. So I'm going to go to the CD-ROM drive. I'm going to then select, choose a file, and here is Linux Mint 19.3. Open that up so it's part of the install here. Click on OK, and then we're going to start the installation. So once I have that, I'm going to select Linux Mint and click on Start for it to boot up. Now you get this message. You can click on the little icon here to just stop displaying it. You notice that we have a countdown timer and it wants to start Linux Mint, so we can wait for it to count down or have it start up right away. All right, and then within a few seconds we'll have basically the Linux Mint operating system all fired up, ready for us to go through a installation. All right, so we got our desktop, and you notice that was actually pretty quick for a operating system that's running off of an ISO image. So this doesn't mean that Linux Mint has been installed. It's just basically running off the ISO image. So to double check, what I'm going to do is look at the actual virtual disk hard drive that I'm utilizing, and we're going to see the file size. All right, to show you basically the file size of the actual folder that we're utilizing, I'm going to go back to the VirtualBox Manager, right click and show in Explorer, and you notice here is our VDI. So this is our virtual disk, and you notice that right now the size is small. So again, remember that we set this thing up so it's dynamically allocated. So as we start installing the operating system, the disk size here is going to increase, or actually the file size is going to increase as we start installing data on there. All right, so let's go back to the installation here. We'll click on Install Linux Mint, and then we'll go through the wizard. All right, so first it's fairly straightforward. So we'll just click on the welcome, and it's going to be an English version. We'll continue. All right, default for the keyboard, which is fine. Now, you could select this option, install third-party software, graphics, etc. if you want to. I'm going to not select this because I want to get through the installation, so I'll just click on continue. And so this is actually very convenient because we just got done talking about disks and partitions. So you notice that in this particular configuration, it wants us to erase the disk and install Linux Mint. So we'll utilize the default option, or we're able to utilize the LVM portion. So we'll just utilize the default. We'll click on Install Now. Now this screen right here, all right, is giving you a update of what it's going to be doing. So if you want to continue with the list below, right, it'll be written to the disk. Otherwise, you'll be able to make further changes manually. So if we take a look at what's going on here, so the partition table that's going to be creating, so it identifies this as a SCSI interface, and it's all in virtual. So it's going to be creating one partition, all right, SDA, and then basically the file format here is going to be ext4. So all these settings are all good. So it's going to create the partition and formatted it with the file system right off the bat, and then install the operating system. Now, since my system is already connected to the network and the internet, and the way the IP numbers work, it knows that I'm in this particular location. So in the Chicago area, we'll just leave it as it is and click on continue. For the username, I'll just simply utilize user1. For the computer name, I'm going to change this and do VB-L1. Okay. I'm going to leave the username as user1 just to play around with and keeping things standard. If you want to change it to something else, that's okay, but I would recommend utilizing user1 for now, because as we do some additional labs, I'll be referring back to certain user accounts, so it just makes it easier. Password, to make things easier, I'm going to utilize PASS.123 with the capital P. Again, it's I'm not following the best practices for passwords, but again, for demo purposes, that's what I'm going to utilize. And I don't want to check this box to automatically log in. I want to make sure that every time the system starts up, I'm going to have a password for prompt for the log on. I'll click on continue. All right, now it's going through the process of copying the files. Since we already have the partition, we have the file system, and now it's copying files onto the drive. Let me switch over to File Explorer, and as you can see, right, the VDI, the hard drive, is actually getting larger and larger, or the file's getting larger because we're writing information to the disk. So basically, let me move up one folder here. So Linux Mint here, all right, you could basically take a copy of this folder and move it to a different machine. Everything is in a virtual setup, and that virtual environment will work. Very, very cool. All right, so right now it's going through the installation. As you can see, it's copying various files over and giving you, some information about the OS as well. So this will take a few minutes depending on how fast your system is. All right, as you can see, the installation is complete. And what we're going to do is we're going to restart the system. And next time when the system reboots, we should have a running operating system in our virtual environment. All right, so the system rebooted. And here we have a prompt for user 1. And then we'll enter our password. And in a moment, we'll have our desktop. For the time being, if you did select the information pertaining to the additional hardware drivers, this may or may not be displayed. There's also another utility that we're able to install, but I'll create another video for that. That utility is actually specific for VirtualBox. So let me just ignore this. This is just a simple welcome screen. There's no need to see this all the time. If you want, you can just deselect this and close the box down. All right, another thing that you may consider doing is changing the video resolution of the desktop. To do that, we'll just click on the start bar and we'll just type in display, and I'll select display here. And we'll just bump this up a little bit to 1024 by 768 and apply it there, so we get a little bit more screen to play around with. So it really depends on what your current existing screen size is, so we get more room to play around with. And then here we have our terminal window where we can start playing around with all the different commands there. All right, that looks great.